10 things you should eliminate from your life. Stoicism. Let's face it, your life is full of things that drain your energy and hold you back. But why do you keep carrying them? Sometimes the most powerful move isn't loud. It's quietly letting go of what no longer serves you. Toxic relationships, gone. Bad habits, out. In today's video, we'll explore Stoic wisdom on releasing what you can't control, so you can free yourself from the chaos. Life is too short to stay trapped by the weight of others' expectations. I'll show you 10 things to eliminate from your life. And trust me, the last one will surprise you. Are you ready to live freely? Before we dive in, let me share a story that captures the essence of Stoic wisdom and how it can transform your life. Subscribe to Stoic in Your Life to stay updated on all things Stoicism. Let's begin. 1. The fear of other people's opinions. Have you ever wondered how many decisions in your life have been shaped by the fear of what others might think? This fear, subtle but persistent, sneaks into your thoughts, creeping under your skin, and before you know it, it controls you. It's as though you're always performing on a stage under the critical eye of an audience that, in reality, isn't even paying attention. And here's the truth. Most people are too absorbed in their own insecurities to judge you. Yet, that fear remains, quietly paralyzing you. This fear of judgment is one of life's silent parasites, feeding on your dreams and preventing you from living authentically. It whispers in your ear every time you consider doing something bold or different. What will they think? And just like that, you change course, adapting your life to what you believe others expect from you. It's ironic, isn't it? We spend so much time worrying about other people's opinions that we stop living the life we want. This fear works like a misguided compass, pushing us to please people who, more often than not, aren't even part of our inner circle. We wear the mask that best fits the moment in our careers, with friends, and even on social media. But in doing so, we bury our true selves under layers of false smiles and borrowed opinions. Sometimes the fear of judgment is sneakier. It disguises itself as caution. It's not the right time, maybe I'm not good enough. These are just excuses, masked as wisdom, but rooted in the same fear of what others will think. Meanwhile, your dreams get archived, waiting for a better moment that never seems to arrive. To eliminate this fear, we must embrace Stoic philosophy. As the Stoics remind us, we cannot control what others think of us, but we can control how we respond. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This sounds simple, but it's a challenge. It requires constant self-reflection and, most of all, courage. It's about learning to live for yourself, to make decisions that make you happy, not ones that fit others' expectations. Life is too short to be lived under the shadow of someone else's opinion. One way to start freeing yourself from this burden is by quietly eliminating the things that don't bring value to your life, things you hold on to only to please others. Do you feel pressured to maintain a certain image? Have you pursued a career that doesn't fulfill you because it seemed like the right choice? Let go of these unnecessary weights. Begin with small decisions. Decline social invitations that don't excite you, or do something you've always wanted to, but were too afraid to try because of what others might say. Each small step will chip away at that fear. Marcus Aurelius wisely advised, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own." Think about that. Now, I'm not going to lie. It won't be easy. Some days, the weight of others' opinions will feel overwhelming. But in those moments, remind yourself that every time you choose to live according to what others think, you lose a piece of who you truly are. It's a slow, quiet kind of death, one that you can avoid if you have the courage to be true to yourself. Trust me, the journey to living authentically will be worth every struggle. Slowly start eliminating those things in silence. You don't need to announce it to the world. Just quietly stop doing what doesn't belong to you. Learn to trust your own judgment, to value your own opinion more than the fleeting opinions of others. Because at the end of the day, the only person you need to answer to is yourself. As the famous psychologist Carl Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. To live fully, you must start by freeing yourself from the chains of public opinion. The next time you hesitate out of fear of judgment, remember that true freedom begins when you stop caring about what others think. Your happiness, your peace, and your sense of self should never depend on someone else's approval. For the men in their 40s to 70s watching this, you've lived long enough to know that life is fleeting. Isn't it time to shed the weight of others' opinions and start living for yourself? This isn't about making drastic, showy changes. It's about making deliberate, meaningful ones. Whether it's leaving a toxic relationship, retiring from a job that no longer fulfills you, or simply learning to say no more often, every step you take towards eliminating unnecessary pressures brings you closer to a life of peace and purpose. Remember, Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Don't waste any more of your time worrying about others. Take the Stoic path. Let go of what you cannot control and embrace the freedom of living authentically. Trust me, when you start making choices based on what you value rather than what others expect, you'll feel a sense of liberation like never before. 2. Toxic relationships. There's a saying that I'm sure you've heard before. There's none so blind as those who will not see. This phrase speaks volumes when it comes to our relationships. Often we practice this selective blindness, especially with the people we allow into our lives. We tolerate relationships that drain our energy, leaving us exhausted and unfulfilled. And before we realize it, these toxic connections are taking more from us than they give. What's even more perplexing is that we hold on to them as if they are essential to our existence. When we talk about toxic relationships, it's easy to think only of romantic partners. But the truth is, these unhealthy connections can exist anywhere, in our families, our friendships, or even at work. The fascinating thing is, no one forces us to stay in these relationships. Yet here we are tolerating them quietly as though walking away is somehow a betrayal or a sign of weakness. Why do we do this? Perhaps because we've been conditioned to believe that cutting ties is an act of cruelty, or that it makes us insensitive. But the truth is, letting go of toxic people might just be the most profound act of self-love you'll ever commit to. Let's take a moment to dive into some Stoic philosophy. The Stoics often spoke about how we shouldn't waste energy worrying about things we can't control. This includes the actions and behaviors of the people around us. You can't control how someone else behaves, but you can control whether or not they remain in your life. It's a simple concept, but here's where it gets tricky. Acting on this knowledge isn't easy, especially when emotions are involved. Now, don't get me wrong. This isn't about seeking revenge or feeling superior. It's about consciously deciding to no longer nurture a relationship that leaves you feeling drained. There's a silent strength in this approach. Imagine it as tending to a garden. If a plant no longer blooms and continues to drain resources, you stop watering it. You don't make a grand declaration. You just let it go. The plant will find its way, and so will you. There's no need for drama, no need for public announcements. It's about understanding that your well-being takes priority. Think about this. Have you ever spent time with someone close to you and walked away feeling emotionally exhausted? It's not necessarily that they are a bad person, but their energy conflicts with yours, creating a toxic atmosphere. This is where you need to be in tune with yourself. Listen to your body and mind. If every interaction feels like a marathon, draining your energy and leaving you more tired than a full week's work, then it's a sign you may be in a toxic relationship. This is where the art of silent elimination comes in. Gradually, you distance yourself. You don't need grand gestures or heated arguments. You simply stop being available. You begin to prioritize yourself, and slowly, the emotional weight lifts. It's incredibly freeing. Not because you're cutting off the world, but because you're choosing to invest your energy into people and activities that nourish you. Self-love sometimes doesn't come with loud declarations of no. Often it's the quiet enough that you say to yourself, So how do you recognize these relationships? It's simple. If every time you see their name pop up on your phone, your stomach knots up, or if spending time with them leaves you more exhausted than a week of work, you have your answer. If you find that you're always the one giving and rarely receiving, then the imbalance is clear. Once you identify these patterns, that's when you can start the process of letting go. Without drama, without unnecessary explanations, just moving forward. In today's world, we're constantly told to stick it out, to remain loyal, to avoid being labeled as someone who gives up easily. But loyalty to others should never come at the expense of loyalty to yourself. You owe it to yourself to seek peace, and sometimes that means walking away from those who disrupt your emotional balance. This isn't cruelty, it's self-respect. After all, the energy you waste on toxic people is energy you could be using to build fulfilling relationships or pursue passions that bring you joy. As Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Surround yourself with people who brighten your soul rather than darken it. Let's consider an example from modern life. Think of a work colleague who constantly undermines your efforts, making every task feel 10 times harder than it should. You've tried to keep the peace, to make things work, but every interaction leaves you feeling drained and unappreciated. You find yourself dreading even the smallest interactions. Now imagine how much more productive and at ease you would feel if you no longer had to endure this toxic presence. It's not about creating conflict or cutting them off dramatically. It's about setting boundaries and choosing when to engage. Slowly but surely, you'll regain your sense of calm and purpose. Letting go of toxic relationships isn't about being harsh or cruel. It's about respecting yourself enough not to allow anyone to deplete your energy. It's about knowing that some people, like the wind, are meant to pass through your life, not stay. As Epictetus once said, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. The same principle applies to relationships. True wealth lies not in having a multitude of connections, but in having relationships that enrich your life. Remember, you deserve to surround yourself with people who uplift you, not weigh you down. So, my friend, if there are people in your life who are more of a burden than a blessing, don't be afraid to let them go. You'll find that in releasing them, you make space for something far greater, your own peace and happiness. 3. Destructive habits. Sometimes we find ourselves trapped in small, seemingly harmless habits that over time erode our peace of mind or physical well-being. These destructive habits often sneak into our lives unnoticed, like a slow leak that eventually wears away at our foundation. Perhaps you've caught yourself mindlessly scrolling through your phone first thing in the morning, not because you're checking something important, but out of sheer habit, a reflex that pulls you into a void of distractions. Before you know it, you've lost 20 minutes of your day, and your mind is already cluttered with unnecessary noise. That's just one example, but it happens in so many ways. An extra cup of coffee you don't need, watching another episode of a series that adds no value to your life, or engaging in a conversation that drains your energy rather than uplifts you. These are the small things that, if left unchecked, slowly chip away at our sense of well-being. Recognizing these habits is the first step, and it's often the hardest. It's easy to see faults in others, but when it comes to ourselves, denial is often our biggest obstacle. How many times have you told yourself that you'll quit a bad habit tomorrow, only for tomorrow to arrive with the same old excuses? It's a cycle we all fall into at some point, and breaking free isn't easy. But here's where Stoic philosophy comes into play. The Stoics taught that real transformation doesn't happen overnight or in grand gestures. Instead, it happens in small, deliberate steps that often go unnoticed by the outside world. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic philosophers, said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." So how do we eliminate these destructive habits without making a big fuss? The key lies in mindfulness. It's not about drastic changes or punishing yourself for slipping up. It's about becoming aware of your actions in the moment and choosing differently, one small decision at a time. When you reach for your phone in the morning, stop and ask yourself why. Are you looking for something specific, or is it just a mindless habit? If it's the latter, put it down and take a deep breath. Stretch. Focus on starting your day with intention rather than distraction. When you feel the urge to pour that third cup of coffee, pause for a second and ask yourself if you truly need it. Often you'll find that you're reaching for it out of routine rather than necessity. It's these small moments of awareness that create lasting change. Breaking free from destructive habits doesn't mean you'll suddenly become a perfect person. We all have our internal struggles, and it's okay to acknowledge that. The goal isn't perfection, but progress. Epictetus, another great Stoic thinker, said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." This can be applied to habits as well. It's not about adding more to your life or making grand resolutions. It's about reducing the behaviors that detract from your happiness and peace of mind, one quiet choice at a time. Think of it like planting a tree. You don't see the results overnight. You plant the seed, water it, and go about your day. Then one day, without any fanfare, you notice that the tree has grown tall and strong. The same goes for eliminating destructive habits. Each small step you take, each time you choose mindfulness over mindlessness, adds up over time. You may not see the change immediately, but slowly, you'll notice that you feel more in control, more at peace. Take a moment to reflect. What are some habits in your life that aren't serving you? Are there actions you repeat out of sheer inertia, even though you know they don't contribute to your well-being? Perhaps it's staying up too late scrolling through social media, or maybe it's the habit of procrastination that leaves you feeling guilty and stressed. Whatever it is, start small. Don't try to overhaul your life in one sweeping motion. Instead, focus on one habit at a time. When you identify a behavior that's holding you back, make the conscious decision to let it go. No drama, no grand announcements, just quiet, consistent action. This journey is yours alone. As you start eliminating the habits that drain you, you'll find that you're creating space for better things. You'll have more energy, more focus, and a greater sense of purpose. As Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Think about how much time and energy you could reclaim by letting go of the small, destructive habits that no longer serve you. 4. The desire to control everything. Have you ever felt that if you don't have absolute control over everything happening around you, things will fall apart? It's a feeling most of us can relate to. We often convince ourselves that if we plan everything down to the smallest detail, if we account for every possible outcome, life will run like a perfectly oiled machine where nothing ever goes wrong. But deep down, we know this is a delusion, don't we? Still, we find ourselves trapped in that mental game, trying to dominate every aspect of our lives. The more we try to grasp control, the more we feel like we're losing it. The truth is, the desire to control it all is nothing more than a mental prison, one that we build brick by brick every time we believe that if we just try hard enough, things will go exactly according to plan. But the Stoics, with their timeless wisdom, teach us that the key to a more peaceful life isn't in controlling everything, but in focusing only on what is within our control and learning to let go of the rest. This teaching is more relevant now than ever, especially in a world where we feel the pressure to manage every little detail. We constantly try to control things like the weather, the opinions of others, how people will react to us, or even the outcomes of situations that are beyond our direct influence. It's like trying to stop the ocean's waves with your bare hands, futile and exhausting. But we do it all the time. And when things inevitably don't go as planned, we feel frustrated, angry, and betrayed, as if the universe itself has conspired against us. It's almost laughable when you think about it. The ancient Stoics understood this well. As Epictetus famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." We can't control external events, but we can control how we respond to them. Picture yourself walking through life carrying a backpack. Each time you try to control something beyond your reach, you add a stone to that backpack. At first, the weight doesn't seem too bad, But as you continue to pile in more and more stones, every attempt to manage the uncontrollable, the load becomes heavier until it's unbearable. Wouldn't it make more sense to take out the stones, to lighten the load, and only carry what you truly have control over? This is what Stoicism invites us to do. Let go of the unnecessary and focus on what we can actually manage: our actions, our emotions, and our thoughts. For a long time, I was obsessed with predicting and controlling everything that could possibly go wrong in my life. If I had a meeting at work, I'd spend hours preparing for every potential awkward question. If I planned a simple outing with friends, I'd worry about whether the place was good enough or if something would go wrong. It was exhausting, and the irony? Most of the things I worried about never even happened. It was a constant cycle of anxiety fueled by the illusion of control. Eventually, I realized that all my efforts to control everything didn't give me peace. They gave me anxiety. So, I began to let go, little by little. I started trusting the process more, accepting that things wouldn't always go according to plan. And you know what? Life went on. Sometimes things worked out, sometimes they didn't. But I felt lighter because I had stopped carrying the burden of what wasn't mine to control. Learning to trust life doesn't mean being passive or irresponsible. It's about having the maturity to accept that some things are simply beyond our control, and that's okay. The Stoics didn't preach resignation. They preached rational action. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us in his Meditations, the universe is change, our life is what our thoughts make it. We must focus on shaping our thoughts and actions, not the world around us. Letting go of control doesn't mean giving up. It means prioritizing your energy on the things that truly matter: your character, your actions, your perspective. Let me give you an example that might resonate with your own life. Think about your career or family life. How often do you find yourself stressing over situations that are completely out of your hands? Perhaps you've worried endlessly about how your boss will perceive a project or how a family event might unfold. We plan, we prepare, and we try to ensure everything is perfect, but life has a funny way of throwing curveballs. No matter how much we plan, there will always be variables beyond our control. Maybe the boss has a bad day and doesn't appreciate your hard work, or maybe an unexpected issue arises at the family event. Do you see how trying to control every little thing only adds unnecessary stress? The Stoic approach invites you to let go of this need. Plan and prepare, yes, but understand that the outcome is not entirely up to you, and that's okay. At the end of the day, letting go of the need to control everything is not about surrendering or becoming passive. It's about freeing yourself from unnecessary burdens. It's about making room for the unexpected, for surprises, for things that are beyond your control. You don't need to announce it to the world. Simply, in the quiet moments of life, make the choice to focus on what is within your reach. As Epictetus wisely stated, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Let's take control of our own journey. If you're ready to stop comparing and start focusing on what truly matters, just comment, "I'm on my own path." Your story is yours. Let's celebrate that. 5. Unrealistic expectations. I don't know about you, but I spent a large part of my life believing I had to be perfect. Nobody ever said it outright, but it was always there, lingering in the air, floating between well-intentioned comments, approving looks, and that constant silent comparison with others. I grew up with the firm belief that meeting other people's expectations, worse yet, my own unrealistic ones, was the key to success. What a lie that turned out to be. When you think about it, trying to meet unrealistic expectations is like trying to fill a bottomless well with a leaky bucket. You're never done and you're always exhausted. In the end, all that's left is a small puddle of frustration at your feet. The most curious part? Most of these expectations aren't even ours. They're crafted by family, friends, and society. And of course we accept them, believing that to be better, we have to meet them. How many times have you felt disappointed because you didn't accomplish something that deep down you didn't even want to do? It's a cycle, isn't it? We set ourselves goals so high that when we fall short, we feel like failures. If I'm not the best at my job, the perfect partner, the ideal friend, or the exemplary child, then what's left of me? These expectations end up weighing more than our actual achievements, slowing us down like a runner with a backpack full of stones. Sure, you might reach the finish line, but by the time you get there, you're dragging your feet wondering if it was even worth it. What good is that? Here's where Stoic philosophy can offer some wisdom. The Stoics, with their profound insight, remind us that we can't control what others think of us, nor can we guarantee that life will unfold the way we hope. What we can control is how we react to it all. The key, then, is to reduce the load. Start by lowering those overwhelming expectations, those heavy stones you've been carrying. It's not about settling for less, it's about freeing yourself. By expecting less from yourself and others, you're not giving up, you're breaking free. You're no longer bound by the constant pressure to meet the impossible. You're simply living and moving forward. But here's the thing. It doesn't happen overnight. You don't just throw all your expectations out the window in one go. Think of it like cleaning out a closet full of old clothes. First, you take stock of what doesn't fit anymore, what you never really liked, and you begin letting go piece by piece. Sometimes it's hard to part with an old shirt you think you might wear again someday, but deep down, you know you won't. The same goes for expectations. Start by getting rid of the ones that aren't really yours. Then, take a closer look at your own and ask yourself, are these realistic? You don't need to keep everything. One way to ease the burden of expectations is by changing the way you talk to yourself. Instead of saying, I must do everything perfectly, try, I'll do the best I can with what I have. It might sound simple, but trust me, it's liberating. You make room for mistakes, which after all are part of being human, and you allow yourself the possibility of improving without that constant crushing pressure. Another tip: keep your plans to yourself. The less you broadcast your intentions, the fewer expectations others will place on you. Expectations from others are often just noise, and that noise doesn't need to define your path. Letting go of unrealistic expectations isn't about giving up. It's a wise act of self-preservation. Instead of focusing on what you should do or who you should be, start focusing on what you truly want and what you can actually control. Less expectation, more freedom. Here's a story from modern life that many of you might relate to. Take, for example, someone at the peak of their career. They've been told they need to constantly climb the corporate ladder, be the best, hit every target, never show weakness. But over time, this person finds themselves not only physically exhausted but mentally drained, constantly anxious about falling short. One day, after yet another sleepless night preparing for a presentation, they realize that they've been living, not for themselves but for the approval of others. This realization can be the beginning of shedding those heavy stones. As Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, wrote in Meditations, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Think about that. The pressure doesn't come from the expectations themselves, but from the importance we place on meeting them. Once you realize that, you have the power to change your perspective. Letting go of expectations doesn't mean lowering your standards or living without goals. It means understanding that some things are beyond your control, and that's perfectly okay. We don't have to be the best at everything. In fact, we can't be. What we can do is give our best effort and let go of the outcome. The real strength lies in knowing when to stop chasing perfection and start embracing who we are, imperfections and all. So, how can you start lowering your expectations today? Maybe it's by being kinder to yourself when you don't get everything on your to-do list done. Maybe it's by accepting that some relationships won't meet your ideal, and that's okay. Maybe it's by letting go of the idea that you need to be constantly productive to be valuable. As you start letting go of these unrealistic pressures, you'll find yourself moving through life with more ease. You'll begin to notice that without the constant burden of shoulds and musts, you're more present, more focused, and more in tune with what truly matters to you. Remember this: the less you expect, the lighter you become. And in that lightness, you'll find the freedom to live authentically, without the weight of unrealistic expectations holding you back. In the end, it's about learning to let go of what doesn't serve you. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca wisely said, "Expectations are the root of all heartache." Let that sink in for a moment. When we expect too much, we set ourselves up for disappointment. But when we learn to live with fewer expectations, especially the ones that don't align with who we really are, we open ourselves to a life of greater contentment and peace. So, my friend, how will you start shedding those unrealistic expectations today? The journey begins with just one small step. 6. The need to always be right. Have you ever caught yourself in a conversation where you just couldn't let go of the need to be right? It's almost as if every exchange becomes a battlefield, and the victory lies in proving that you're the one with all the answers. But here's the thing. That battle isn't with others, it's with yourself. Every time you insist on having the last word, or on showing that you know best, you're essentially tying your sense of worth to being right. Isn't that exhausting? Personally, I've found it to be one of the most draining habits I've carried with me. Society has taught us that being wrong is a sign of weakness. Whether it's through social media, work meetings, or even family discussions, we're conditioned to believe that making mistakes equals failure. But let me let you in on a little secret. Being right all the time is not what's important in life. The Stoics, with their ancient wisdom, remind us to focus on what we can control, and you can't control how others perceive you or how they react to your opinions. Trying to maintain the image of being the smartest person in the room doesn't lead anywhere. It just leaves you more anxious, more frustrated, and in the end, more isolated. Think about it for a moment. What do you actually gain from always being right? Is there some kind of invisible medal you're chasing? I doubt it. It's like carrying around a suitcase full of unnecessary rocks. Every argument, every forced opinion, adds another stone. Eventually, the weight becomes unbearable, and you can't figure out why you're so exhausted. The answer is simple. You're wearing yourself out for something that has no real value. So the next time you feel that urge to correct someone or prove your point, try something different. Stay silent. Not out of resignation, but out of liberation. It's like holding onto a pen for hours. You don't even realize how tight your grip has been until you let go. And when you finally drop it, the relief is instant. You feel a weight lifted that you didn't even know you were carrying. This is exactly what happens when you release the need to always be right. You begin to see that the struggle wasn't necessary. You were stuck in a war you never really needed to fight. But how do you let go of this need? First, you have to accept that it's okay not to be the person who knows the most in every conversation. There's no harm in admitting when you're wrong or even admitting that you don't have an opinion on every single topic. Life isn't a game where the smartest person wins. The next step is learning to truly listen, not just to hear what the other person is saying so you can refute it, but to really understand their perspective. There's a massive difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is a basic biological function. Listening is an art. And when you truly listen, the need to jump in and correct or impose your views melts away. You become more interested in understanding than in winning. Finally, learn to appreciate silence in those moments when no response is necessary. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do in a conversation is let the other person have the last word. Why? Because winning an argument isn't the same as having peace. And at the end of the day, isn't peace far more valuable than being right? Let me ask you this. Is it really worth being right if it comes at the cost of your inner peace? I don't think so. The next time you're in a conversation and you feel that familiar urge to correct or impose your opinion, take a deep breath, let go of that mental pen, and just let it be. You'll find that the peace you gain from releasing that need is far more satisfying than any fleeting sense of victory. For those of you who need a little extra encouragement, think about the Stoics. They knew that true wisdom doesn't come from winning every debate. It comes from knowing when to walk away. As Seneca once said, True knowledge lies not in winning every battle, but in knowing when not to fight. In modern life, this habit of needing to be right plays out in countless ways. At work, at home, online. We've all seen those heated discussions on social media where people argue back and forth over trivial things, desperate to have the last word. Or maybe you've experienced it during a family dinner, where a simple conversation turns into a full-blown debate about who's right. We've all been there, and it's exhausting. But what if we could choose to disengage? What if we could recognize that winning an argument doesn't define our value as a person? This isn't just about improving your interactions with others. It's about giving yourself permission to let go of an unnecessary burden. When you no longer feel the need to have the last word or be the smartest in the room, you free up your mental and emotional energy for things that truly matter. You become lighter, less anxious, and more focused on the present moment. And isn't that what Stoicism is all about? Focusing on what you can control and letting go of the rest? And remember, as Marcus Aurelius wisely said, "It is not events that disturb people, it is their judgments concerning them." Often it's not the conversation or disagreement itself that causes stress. It's our need to control it, to dominate it, to win. When you release that need, you'll find that life becomes much simpler, much more peaceful. 7. Digital noise. Have you ever noticed how your life is now surrounded by a constant digital noise? And no, I don't just mean the sounds of traffic or the drilling from your neighbor's wall. I'm talking about the noise that's always in your pocket, at your fingertips, flashing across your screen. The endless notifications, the never-ending social media updates, the messages that keep pouring in. It feels like everything around us is designed to pull us away from the present, keeping us on edge, always alert. Yet, here we are, thinking we have control, when in reality, this digital chaos is controlling us. The truth is, we live in a time where silence has become a luxury, but it's not as unattainable as it seems. The first step is recognizing what's truly robbing your attention, and I can tell you right now, there are things in your digital life that need to be eliminated, quietly and deliberately. The digital chaos won't vanish just because you close an app for a few minutes. That's like trying to put out a wildfire with a glass of water. What you need is a more radical approach, something the Stoics themselves would appreciate. They knew that inner peace is what truly matters, and you can't find that peace if you're constantly pulled into the whirlwind of notifications. First and foremost, let's talk about social media. Yes, I know it sounds like a cliché, but let's face it, the more accounts you follow, the more noise you create in your life. I'm not suggesting you disconnect entirely, but ask yourself, do you really need to know what the cousin of your friend's friend did over the weekend? Social media can be a great tool for staying connected, but it can also be a massive source of unnecessary distraction. Take a moment to reflect on the content you're consuming. Is it adding value to your life, or just filling up the empty spaces? Like cleaning out an old closet, every once in a while it's essential to do a digital detox. Eliminate the things that no longer serve you. Or worse, things that never should have been there in the first place. Next up are notifications, which are even more insidious. Why do you allow your phone to interrupt you every 2 minutes? Each time it vibrates or you hear that familiar ping, your brain jumps, breaking your focus and stealing your energy. Did you know that research has shown how much time and mental energy we waste every time we get distracted by our phones? And it's not just time lost, it's the mental toll of switching between tasks. The simple solution? Turn off all non-essential notifications. At first you might feel a bit anxious, like you're missing something important. But soon, you'll start to notice the calm that comes from controlling when and how you check your phone, rather than letting it control you. It's a small step, but it makes a big difference in reclaiming your mental clarity. Then there's FOMO, the fear of missing out, that nagging feeling that if you're not constantly connected, you're missing something vital. But here's a hard truth. What truly matters isn't happening on your screen, it's happening around you. The people you love, the moments that pass by while you're glued to your device, they are the things that actually matter. Let me ask you, How many meaningful conversations or real-life experiences have you missed because you were too busy scrolling through your phone, trying to keep up with the latest viral meme or headline? The constant pull of digital life convinces us that we need to be in the know all the time, but it's a trap. The more you try to keep up with everything, the more you miss out on what's really important. Eliminate that fear. Let go of the need to be involved in everything, because the more you release that noise, the more space you create for what truly matters in life. Once you begin to remove this unnecessary digital clutter, something almost magical happens. You start to hear what's actually important, your own thoughts, your own desires, the quiet voice of your true priorities. This, my friend, is what the Stoics understood so well. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." When you clear away the digital distractions, you allow yourself to focus on what you can control, your actions, your responses, your attention. What you're striving for is not just the absence of noise, but the presence of silence, the kind of silence that allows you to connect with yourself and your values. Digital silence is the first step toward reconnecting with your inner world, and that's where you'll find your true priorities. This is where the philosophy of Stoicism becomes so practical in today's world. You can't control the noise and chaos that exists outside, but you can absolutely control how you react to it. And trust me, when you take control of your digital environment, everything else becomes clearer. So here's my advice: choose silence, not as a void where nothing happens, but as a conscious decision to focus on what truly matters. In our modern era, this is the ultimate luxury. As Mahatma Gandhi said, "Peace is not the absence of noise, but the presence of yourself." When you eliminate the unnecessary digital distractions, you give yourself the gift of time. Time to think, to reflect, to engage in the world around you with purpose. Think about it. What are you really gaining from all that digital noise? Is it bringing you closer to your goals, to the people you love, to the life you want to live? Or is it simply pulling you further away from those things? You don't have to give up technology entirely, but you can be more intentional with how you use it. You can choose to make space for what matters and eliminate the rest. So the next time you find yourself mindlessly scrolling through your phone or jumping at every notification, stop and ask yourself, do I really need this in my life? The answer is often no. Instead, embrace the silence and watch as your focus sharpens, your anxiety lessens, and your priorities come into clearer view. And remember, as Epictetus so wisely put it, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. In the same way, true digital freedom isn't about consuming more information, but about wanting less distraction. Eliminate the noise, choose the silence, and discover how much more fulfilling life can be when you're present in the moments that truly matter. 8. Negative thoughts. Have you ever noticed how negative thoughts can sneak into your mind without warning? They slip in quietly like an uninvited guest, and before you know it, they're dictating everything you do. It's almost like those neighbors who show up at your door unannounced and then refuse to leave. The worst part? Sometimes you hand them the keys, not because you want to, but because they've convinced you that they're inevitable, a part of your daily routine. But what if I told you that you could change the locks? Let's be real. Those negative thoughts are nothing more than destructive patterns, shaping your actions in ways that don't serve you. You've probably caught yourself thinking, "Why does everything go wrong for me?" Or, "I'll never make it." And when those thoughts repeat themselves enough, you start to believe them, and what you believe you begin to act on. It's like planting a poisoned tree and then wondering why its fruit is inedible. The funny thing about these thoughts is that they aren't necessarily the truth, but they sure do feel as real as the ground beneath your feet. This is where Stoic philosophy steps in with its refreshing simplicity. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. It's such a straightforward concept, yet it slips through our fingers all the time. Instead of taking charge of how we react, we let those mental patterns steer our emotions and decisions. True freedom, though, comes from grabbing the reins of your responses. But here's the thing, it's not something that changes overnight. The first step is silence. Yes, you read that right. Eliminate these thoughts quietly. You don't need to make a grand spectacle of trying to push them out of your mind. Just start by recognizing when a negative thought shows up. Identify it, and then let it pass without feeding it. The more attention you give these thoughts, the stronger they become. It's like trying to catch a fly in your room. If you obsess over it, you only end up stirring things up. Why not just ignore it until it tires itself out? Another powerful technique is to question your thoughts. Whenever a destructive thought hits, ask yourself, is this really true? Does everything really go wrong for me, or am I just exaggerating? More often than not, you'll find that these are inflated ideas with little grounding in reality. And if there is some truth to them, then you've just found the starting point for solutions instead of drowning in the problem. Then there's the idea of detachment. I'm not suggesting that you become a monk on a mountaintop, but rather that you start creating some emotional distance from your thoughts. Your thoughts are not you, and just because something crosses your mind doesn't mean it deserves to stay there. This takes practice, but over time you'll learn to see them for what they are, passing clouds in a sky that remains steady and unchanging. Negative thoughts are like small annoyances that you should eliminate quietly from your life. They don't need a big fuss, just a shift in perspective, patience, and a bit of self-questioning. Because at the end of the day, what you think shapes what you do, and what you do defines who you are. Think about that for a moment. The power of your thoughts directly influences the course of your actions. Let's bring this into a modern context. How often do you find yourself scrolling through social media and comparing your life to others? Maybe you think, why don't I have what they have? Or, I'm not as successful as I should be at this point in my life. These are exactly the kinds of negative thought patterns that creep in unnoticed and start to eat away at your sense of self-worth. The endless stream of curated perfect moments from other people's lives can make you feel like you're falling behind. But here's a question for you. Are these comparisons rooted in reality, or are they just distorted perceptions fueled by your own insecurities? The Stoics would remind us to focus on what we can control. You can't control what others post, or how their lives appear online, but you can control how much attention you give to it and how it affects your mindset. As Epictetus famously said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. When you recognize that these negative comparisons are just thoughts, not facts, you regain the power to shape your own narrative. So how do you begin to let go of these thought patterns? Start by practicing the art of letting them drift away without reacting. When a negative thought arises, acknowledge it, but don't let it take root. Ask yourself if it's based on reality, and if not, let it go. Over time, this practice of detachment will become second nature, and you'll find that your mind becomes a much more peaceful place. As you work through this process, remember to be kind to yourself. Changing your mental patterns takes time and patience. There will be moments when you slip back into old habits, and that's okay. The key is to keep moving forward, little by little. With each step, you're freeing yourself from the grip of negative thinking, opening up more space for clarity, focus, and ultimately, peace of mind. At the end of the day, your thoughts are like the foundation of a house. If they're solid and well constructed, the house stands strong. But if the foundation is weak, everything built on top of it is shaky. By eliminating the negative thoughts that undermine your confidence and happiness, you're strengthening the very base of your life. Once you start to free yourself from the hold of negative thinking, you'll notice that your actions and decisions become more aligned with who you truly want to be. You'll stop being driven by fear, doubt, or the need for approval, and start living from a place of purpose and conviction. So the next time a negative thought creeps into your mind, stop and ask yourself, is this thought serving me, or is it holding me back? And remember, as Brian Tracy wisely said, thoughts aren't facts, but if you believe them, they become your reality. Choose to believe thoughts that lift you up, not ones that weigh you down. The more you practice this, the more you'll find that the real battle isn't with the world outside, but with the mind inside. And that's a battle you can win, one thought at a time. 9. Physical and mental disorder. Sometimes we wake up feeling like the world is just a little heavier than usual. You look around, And it's not just a feeling, it's real. Your space is cluttered, filled with things you don't need. Piles of papers, clothes thrown over the chair, random objects scattered around. And somehow your mind feels the same way. A jumbled mess of thoughts, worries, and half-formed ideas. It's funny how physical and mental clutter seem to mirror each other, isn't it? When my surroundings are chaotic, I find that my mind tends to follow suit. The connection between physical disorder and mental chaos is stronger than we'd like to admit. There's something deeply unsettling about clutter, and it directly affects our ability to think clearly. The Stoics often emphasized the importance of focusing on what is essential and eliminating the superfluous. And if you think about it, clutter is the opposite of that. It's all the unnecessary things that distract us, weigh us down, and disrupt our peace. Every item out of place, every paper you've held onto for months, every useless thing that clutters your space isn't just occupying physical room, it's draining your mental energy. These things create background noise, filling your mind with tasks that linger, worries that you weren't even consciously aware of, all building up without you realizing it. You know that feeling when you want to tidy up, but you don't even know where to begin? It's overwhelming. Here's the trick though, you don't need to do it all at once. It's not about tackling everything in one big, dramatic cleanup. It's about eliminating in silence little by little until the unnecessary disappears. The first step is simple. Observe. Look around you and ask yourself, do I really need all of this? If you haven't used something in a long time, chances are you don't need it anymore. The same rule applies to your mental clutter. Just like you hold on to old, broken objects thinking they might be useful someday, you do the same with thoughts, worries, and emotions. You keep them tucked away in the corners of your mind even though they're doing nothing but weighing you down. Holding on to these things, whether physical or mental, just makes everything heavier. So, what can you do? Eliminate quietly, piece by piece. There's no need to make a big announcement or turn it into a spectacle. You don't have to tell the world about it. Just start letting go of what no longer serves you. This applies to both the things in your home and the thoughts in your head. Sometimes quiet simplicity is the greatest act of rebellion in a world that's constantly demanding more noise and more attention. If there are people in your life who drain your energy, projects that no longer motivate you, or thoughts that only drag you down, get rid of them. Don't overthink it, don't dramatize it, and don't look back, just let them go. Detach with no fanfare, no guilt, and no drama. You don't owe anyone an explanation for prioritizing your peace. It's important to remember that external order often reflects internal clarity. When you start clearing your physical space, you'll notice that your mind also starts to feel lighter. It's not magic, it's a process, like cleaning out a cluttered drawer. Suddenly, as you create order, you feel a sense of relief. Because each item in its place is one less thing to worry about. Each object you discard is one step closer to a lighter, clearer life. It's amazing how a little bit of physical organization can lead to mental freedom. The Stoics didn't complicate their lives with the unnecessary. They understood that the key to a fulfilled life was focusing on what truly mattered. What didn't matter? They let it pass, no questions asked. It's such a simple idea, but so powerful. We live in a world that constantly pushes more. More things, more distractions, more commitments. It's like being stuck in a maze where every turn leads to more clutter, and we can't find the way out. But when you start eliminating what doesn't serve you, you realize that the exit has been there all along. It was just hidden behind all the stuff you didn't need. If you want peace of mind, start by decluttering what surrounds you. Do it slowly, without pressure. Eliminate in silence, but do it consistently. Your mind will thank you for it. As Nelson Mandela once said, when the noise stops, the essentials are heard more clearly. This applies to your mental space as much as your physical one. Now you might be thinking, where do I even begin? Start small. Pick one area, whether it's a corner of your living space or a single negative thought pattern, and work on that. Decluttering isn't a one-time event. It's a practice. Slowly, over time, as you remove what doesn't serve you, you'll begin to see the peace that lies underneath all the noise. In our modern world, it's easy to get swept up in the chaos. We're constantly bombarded with things to do, things to buy, and things to worry about. But as the Stoics teach us, real contentment comes not from accumulating more, but from learning to be satisfied with less. As Epictetus said, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. The fewer distractions, the fewer attachments, the fewer unnecessary things crowding our lives, the more room we have for what really matters. So I ask you, what's one thing, just one, that you can start eliminating today? It doesn't have to be huge. It can be as simple as clearing out a drawer or letting go of a thought that's been weighing you down. What matters is that you take that first step. With each step, the path to clarity becomes clearer, and before you know it, you'll find yourself living a life that's not just lighter, but more focused, more intentional, and ultimately more peaceful. Ready to let go of comparisons. If you're done measuring yourself against others and want to embrace your unique path, drop a quick I choose my progress in the comments. Let's inspire each other. 10. Unnecessary comparisons. Why do we have this constant habit of comparing ourselves to others? Let's be honest, everyone does it. But tell me, has it ever really helped you? It's like running in a race where no one else even knows they're competing, and even worse, they probably don't care. Yet there you are inside your own head, measuring every step, every misstep, every little accomplishment, but not your own, no. You're focused on everyone else's progress. Comparing yourself to others is like trying to win a singing contest using someone else's voice. It's pointless. You have your own melody, your own rhythm, yet you insist on following someone else's sheet music. This seemingly harmless habit slowly chips away at your self-esteem. One day you wake up feeling like you're not good enough, not fast enough, not enough of whatever it is, and all because you're too busy looking at others instead of focusing on your own journey. The truth is, life isn't a sprint. It's more like a long, thoughtful voyage. You get to choose the direction, the pace, and the stops along the way. But when you spend too much time watching other people's ships pass by, you lose track of your own course. Here's the irony. While you're busy eyeing someone else's ship, they're probably doing the same thing to yours. That's how absurd this cycle of comparison is. Everyone's looking at someone else, but no one's truly enjoying their own journey. Here's an idea for you. Stop comparing yourself silently. Just like you would quietly throw away an old shirt you no longer wear, let go of this habit without making a big deal out of it. No one needs to know, but you'll feel the change. Because comparing yourself to others isn't just pointless, it's a form of betrayal to yourself. It's like telling your inner self that it's not good enough, that you need to be someone else in order to matter. Think about it for a second. That logic doesn't make sense, does it? The Stoics understood this well. The only valid comparison is with the person you were yesterday. So, what can you do when you catch yourself comparing again? The solution isn't to try and silence that voice in your head, because doing that will only make it louder. Instead, acknowledge it but challenge its reasoning. Ask yourself, why am I comparing myself to this person? What makes me feel inferior in this moment? And here's the critical part. Remind yourself of all you've accomplished on your own path. Take a moment to reflect on your progress, your victories, no matter how small they may seem. You'd be surprised how easy it is to forget your own achievements when you're constantly focused on others. Another strategy that works wonders is practicing gratitude. I know it sounds like a cliche, but it's incredibly powerful. Be thankful for what you have, what you've achieved, and for who you are. When you focus on what you have, instead of on what you lack or on what others possess, something shifts. Suddenly, the weight of comparison starts to fade, and you realize that the only path that truly matters is your own. At the end of the day, life is too short to waste it competing in an imaginary race with others. Comparisons only serve to distract you from what's really important, living your life at your own pace by your own rules. And trust me, once you start doing that, you'll realize just how freeing it is. I'd like to leave you with a thought that has helped me a lot during difficult times. When you stop seeing yourself through the eyes of others, you discover who you truly are. That's the real key to inner peace. But let's break this down into something more practical. Think about how often you scroll through social media and find yourself comparing your life to someone else's. You see pictures of someone's vacation, their new car, or their career milestone, and suddenly you feel less than. You start to wonder if you're falling behind or if you're doing something wrong. But what you're not seeing is the full picture. Social media is a highlight reel, not real life. People only show you what they want you to see. You don't see the struggles, the failures, the stress behind those perfect moments. The Stoics would remind you to focus on what you can control, and in this case, that means your own thoughts and actions. As Marcus Aurelius said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. You can't control what others post, how successful they appear, or how their lives look from the outside. But you can control how much importance you give to these comparisons. You can choose to look inward instead of outward. And remember this: comparison is the thief of joy. Every time you compare yourself to someone else, you're robbing yourself of happiness, contentment, and peace. Why let someone else's journey take away from your own? You're not running their race, you're running yours. So why measure yourself by their progress? Here's another perspective. Imagine being in a room full of people, each one focused on their own tasks, their own lives. Some may be ahead of you, some may be behind, but the truth is, no one is really paying attention to what you're doing. They're all too busy with their own lives. The same goes for you. You're busy watching others, but they're not even thinking about you. They're just living their lives, oblivious to your comparisons. Let go of the need to compare, and instead celebrate your own progress. Take pride in the steps you've taken, the challenges you've overcome, and the unique path you're walking. When you stop comparing, you start living for yourself, not for the approval or validation of others. So the next time you feel that urge to compare, stop and ask yourself, what am I really trying to gain from this? And more importantly, what am I losing by doing this? The answer is often that you're losing more than you think: your time, your peace, and your happiness. To wrap this up, I challenge you to start today. Make a conscious decision to stop comparing yourself to others, even if it's just for a day. See how it feels to focus solely on your own journey, without the distraction of someone else's life. You might be surprised at how liberating it is to run your own race. And if you take one thing away from this, let it be this: the only person you should strive to be better than is the person you were yesterday. When you focus on that, you'll realize that your growth, your happiness, and your success are all that really matter. Everything else, it's just noise. Thank you for taking the time to listen and join me on this journey of exploring philosophy and life's valuable lessons. I hope these insights have given you a fresh perspective and help you live with more peace and purpose each day. If you found this content helpful, feel free to share your thoughts and feedback. Together, we'll continue to learn and grow. Remember, your life is the only journey that truly matters.